Sure.
I'm going to use your mic.
Oh, yeah.
Right beside you. You just stay there.
Okay.
Okay, so thanks everybody for being here. And you don't have to lean in.
Are you sure?
I mean,
Okay.
I love that you're. Thanks everybody for being here. We wanted to bring Gretchen here to talk to some folks that might have some like PTSD, anxiety, depression, mold sensitivities, food allergies, chemical sensitivities, light, sound sensitivities, things like that, because we see that a lot coming through our doors, and we've talked to a lot of people about it, but we really wanted to bring someone in that has experienced going through some severe mold sensitivities and some other things I'm sure that you've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
So Gretchen has been our friend for many years. We don't see each other often because she lives inside the perimeter.
I do.
And that's okay. We have Facebook.
That's right.
So I saw her story on Facebook, and then she's just been really talking about what's happened with her and what she's been going through. And I told Shalani about it, and I was like, oh man, I want her to come speak because she's engaging, she's awesome, she's funny, and she has an incredible story. And why not share this story with our community? And I'm so glad that each one of you all are here, and I know you'll get a lot out of it. And if you might even know friends that have stuff like that they're going through, kind of like what she's going through, or anxiety or anything like that. So you can share that information that you learned tonight. Okay, so thank you all for being here, and we'll let Gretchen talk.
Okay. Well, do we want to talk about like how it might have helped your family a little bit first, or are we just going to go start in mine? You want to go into mine first? We'll go into mine first. That's fine.
I don't care.
Okay.
Okay, because it started with Gretchen.
Okay, I'll start.
We found out that Gretchen.
Yes.
So Gretchen, we learned about DNRS from you.
Yes.
And then Shalani has done it. I am still not. I'm going to do it. Yeah, right. And I'm right there with y'all. So
now we got her on the spot.
I'm going to do it. Because I'm very scattered, and some PTSD and stuff like that.
We all
too,
got stuff.
But I think our society is just so frazzled, and we've gone through so much that, I think everybody needs it, to be honest with you.
I agree.
It's a commitment. But
It is.
It's
work.
It's work, but I don't know if you have pictures of you before.
I do have some. I would probably have to send my phone around so you guys just don't look in my gallery, because there's some pictures in there that, no, I'm kidding. But I can send some pictures around. And also, if you guys want to go on my Instagram page or in my Facebook, you're welcome to like friend me or find me, because you scroll through that. I've been very vocal about it in Instagram because I don't go by my first name there, and people don't know me as well as when I was sick and I was on Facebook, and you'd post about how you were feeling, and then your friends are all like, ignore, that's kind of a little bit of what I experienced. It's kind of weird, but I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'll just go ahead. You want me to just go ahead?
Yeah, so tell us,
okay.
How you got where you were, and then how you got where you are.
Okay, all right.
So
my story actually starts out before mold illness, but I didn't know that. I suffered from chronic neck and back pain for about 5 years. And it got to the point where it was like so super debilitating that I couldn't even dig a hole to like plant something. And I'm a big gardener, so that was really hard for me. And I was really suffering and really starting to get depressed. And I had a vision, and in my vision, I saw myself in bed dying because my bones were being snapped by my muscles, being snapped in half. And I went and I talked to my chiropractor about it. And my chiropractor says, oh, you have tension myositis syndrome. Go read this book by Dr. John Sarno. And that was the last time I saw her for 2 years. I went, I read the book. It kind of worked like brain retraining, but it didn't, because it didn't address the underlying limbic system trauma that I had. Chronic pain is a manifestation, as is so many other things that we experience, of limbic system trauma. And basically how I cured it was I would walk around saying, I don't have body pain. I have repressed emotions. And I started training, and that's how I got into powerlifting. So I went from like not being able to dig a hole to being able to bench press almost 180 pounds. It's like kind of an amazing story, right? So then I'm living in this house, and life is going along all grand, and I am super healthy, as I imagine most of you guys try to eat well, do everything right for yourselves. I had a reverse osmosis water system, and I also had a whole house filter. And this had been installed in my house for a couple of years. And I used to be a building manager, so you would think this would occur to me, that there was no chlorine coming into my pipes at all, none coming into the reverse osmosis tank. And I started getting sick. And I couldn't figure out what was making me sick. I started having rashes. I was coughing all the time. My thyroid quit. I was on so much thyroid medicine, my doctor was like, I can't give you any more. I've never given anybody this much thyroid medicine before. I stopped sleeping. My menstrual cycle went crazy. And I was really fortunate because I was already in naturopathic care. So I circumvented what is a big nightmare for a lot of people who end up with these weird illnesses and going through conventional medicine. I was already with a naturopath, and he was like, you've been exposed to mold. And I'm like, no, I have not been exposed to mold. My house is brand new. My husband built it. He did not build me a moldy house. I do not have mold. You're wrong. It's something else. And then one day, I pick up my water bottle that's been sitting out all night. I go to take a drink, and it stinks like mold. And I was like, oh my God, it's my water. And I had to think, like, when did my symptoms first show up to the time that I identified it. And I had been drinking a half a gallon to a gallon of moldy water for about a year. My husband and I both. And he had some symptoms too, but when he stopped drinking the water, he was fine. He's Greek, he's got great genetics, whatever. He was like, rawr. And me, I'm like, not feeling great. You know, it's just, I'm kind of struggling, going through it, trying to get better, doing all the stuff. I'm taking the binders. My doctor has me on the cholestyramine. He has me doing all this stuff, and I'm trying to push through it, but I'm going downhill. My mental abilities, brain fog, fatigue. I don't know if any of you have ever heard the term spoonie. Like, you know, you only have so many spoons of energy a day. I didn't really realize that I was becoming a spoonie because I kind of chose to, I didn't want to face what was really happening with me. And my doctor kept telling me, you got to read this book. It's Surviving and Thriving Mold Illness. And I don't know if any of you have had the unfortunate experience of reading that book, but he had been trying to get me to read it for 6 months. And I had it, but I didn't read it. And then I read it. And when I read it, I almost had a heart attack that night. Like, I'm sitting there in bed and I'm like, my life is over. Like, I can't possibly do the things that they say to do in this book. Or if you go outside, you got to come in and change your clothes before you bring mold spores in, and your friends come over and they might expose you, which I had happened. But that night when I read that book, it put so much fear and panic in me that it pushed me over the edge. I went from being kind of sick, I was sick, to going everywhere in a mask. So I got the mask. It was a HEPA filter. I would wear it so I could go places, but I couldn't eat inside restaurants anymore. There were a lot of foods I couldn't eat anymore because every time I would eat them, I would take what was a mold hit, right? So it's like my limbic system developed supersensory powers for mold. I'm a real estate agent. So I had a client that fired me because he didn't want to be seen with me in a mask, which actually my mask was cool looking. I looked like Bane. I looked super tough. I was like, I know, I was like, what is wrong with you? But okay. But I would go in houses and I would have it off, and as soon as I would open the door, in about a third of homes, I could smell the mold before I would walk in. And I was like, wow, like I'm like a bloodhound. And I could smell it. If I would eat something and it had mold in it, and the United States has really bad standards for mold in their food, I would get super sick, like almost take me down, and I'd be sick for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I found the Bulletproof Diet by Dave Asprey. I don't know if y'all are familiar with him. He had mold, he had Lyme. That's how he put all this stuff together. And that was super helpful for me. And I thought, oh, I'm going to beat it now. I'm really going to get down this road. I've got all these body hacks, you know, all of this. But I started to get really sensitive to chemicals. Like, I thought my neighbor was spray painting his car in the driveway, and I was going to go let him have it, and it was my yoga mat. And then I went to drink coffee, and my coffee, I was like, did you even rinse these? Like, this is disgusting. Like, I started doing what's called kindling. So what happens is a lot of times when you develop one of these illnesses, your brain kind of sets fire. And it's like, okay, mold, now let's do some chemical sensitivities on top of that. Maybe, yeah, no more phones, no more electrical anything, like that's scary. And it just goes on this downward spiral. And that's where I started to go. I was looking for community on Facebook and on Instagram, and I came across this girl's page, and she kept writing, ask me how I'm healing using DNRS, and I'm like, she must work for these people. I don't know what she's selling, you know, but so I was kind of like that, which most people are, really skeptical when they first hear about the stuff I was. And then I was looking at buying campers to move to the desert to do mold avoidance so I could get out of it. I was in the mold forums, which are like the darkest place on earth, where it's like doom and gloom. It's horrible. And one of the things that people who have these things experience are a lot of dark thoughts of suicide. And that was the first time in my life that I ever thought that I might not like be able to like do this life. And I recognized that it was a symptom because I read so much about it, but it was really hard to go through. And then I found, I went ahead and ordered the program, brain retraining. And absolutely, the hardest thing, and I've done some hard things, the hardest thing I've ever done was mold illness and brain retraining. Because you've been avoiding this horrible monster, right? Limbic system. You've been avoiding this horrible monster, and then all of a sudden to heal yourself, you're going to go shake hands with it every day, and you're going to get sick. And that scared the crap out of me, because being around my monster would just take me down. And so it took a lot of courage, and it took a lot of faith and hard work. And there's a saying, think greater than you feel. And you really understand that when you're going through this. So basically what dynamic neural retraining systems is this gal, she had multiple chemical sensitivities. She was exposed, she had a big exposure, just like had a big exposure to mold. She got super sick. She ended up living in a tent, and she was a psychologist or a psychiatrist one, and she came up with this whole program based on all her brain research. And basically what this is that you had an exposure to something. You had a trigger. You had something that was so horrifying to your body that your limbic system got stuck in a rut, and that thing, it's developed superpowers to, and now you're stuck in this over-responsive loop all the time. And I'm like, I don't even know how this stuff is going to get me out of it, because a lot of times I would, react before I would have a chance to, it's like the reaction would come first. So one of the things I did, and I don't know if you did this too, but Joe Dispenza, have you guys ever heard of Joe Dispenza? So he's a doctor, and he does a lot of work in the whole brain retraining area. And he has a book called Breaking the Habit of Being You. And if you're going to do this program, please read that book at least before or at the same time, so that you understand the physiology of what's going on with you and why it's so hard. Because what happened is I became an addict. I became addicted to the fear. I became addicted to the panic, to the anxiety, to all of that. And I was breaking an addiction to being who I am, or who I became through this. And understanding what I was really fighting made me feel a lot better about myself, because I would lay in bed, be like almost asleep, and all of a sudden I would just have this incredible rush of the lions are after me, and I would fold up out of bed, and it would be like, heart pounding stuff. That's because my body developed all these receptors on its cells for that particular chemical mix, and it needed its hit. And the only way to break that cycle is doing the brain retraining. So I tell people when they do this, that first, and everybody's different. Some people, get through it in a few months. Some people get through it takes 18 months. Whatever that period of time for you is, that is the beginning of it's literally your walk through hell, because your limbic brain is already programmed to be negative. That's how it keeps us alive. But when you're like doing this stuff and it doesn't want to change, and your body physiology doesn't want to change, you're fighting everything that you are now. And you have to change your whole way of thinking. And at the end of the whole training, when you get through it, you have become someone new, someone better. So I tell people mold illness is actually the best thing that's ever happened to me. It saved my life. I have learned so many lessons and been able to help so many people through this. If I die tomorrow, it's all been worth it. I mean, it's just such a blessing, because I always thought before this that I was a positive person, but I was never forced to look at what was going on inside of my head 24 hours a day and change those things, because my life, my healing, everything that I wanted depended on it. And so now I know that in a body that's full of gratitude, full of joy and happiness, there's no room for illness. And it's because I've been through the chronic pain, and I healed that myself to some degree. And then I've gone through the mold illness, and I've healed that. And I've done it right here. Central processing unit, right? It controls everything. So the inflammation that I had, the neurodegeneration, the damage to my nervous system, all that stuff was real. My body was really doing that in what it thought was a response to take care of me, but it was an over response with my immune system, and it tore me down. Like, it tore me down. It has taken me 6 months to feel like myself again. And this is like every month I say a piece of myself comes back to me. So this month it's been focus. I'm still not adulting on a full-time level, because stress will kill your gains in the brain game world. It will take you back. So I'm super careful about stress. I let go of a lot of things now that I just never would have before. It just teaches you how to be a better human being. And so I tell people all the time who have anxiety and depression, those things, I'm like, this is the stuff. Like, I healed mold illness. Anxiety and depression are big parts of that. And you don't have mold illness, so kill it. Like, go get it, do it. But a lot of times what happens is your body's driving the car, and it's going to send those messages and be like, no, we're not going to do that. That's bull crap. That stuff doesn't work. It's hocus pocus. Get rid of her, So there's a lot of resistance at first that people have to this kind of stuff. But it's amazing work. And I started the program in July, and I stopped reacting to mold completely in September. And I thought that was like 3 months, and I was like, I'm healed. And I had signed up to do bench press nationals, which is a pretty big deal. So now I was going to go for an American record. And I thought I was going to be renting a truck and sleeping in the back of it. That's how I was going to do it, because I'll just figure out and make it happen, because I'm very hard-headed like that. But I got to go. I got to stay in a hotel. The building was 115 years old. I didn't have any reaction to that. But the stress and the adrenaline of being there, when I went to do my thing, I was hearing commands that weren't being spoken. I was not hearing commands that were being spoken, and I could not lift even my warm-up weight. My brain was just like, rah! It could not handle it. And so I knew at that point, I was like, okay, so I've peeled back some layers of the onion, but I still got some ways to go here. So that helped me adjust and change my training a little bit so that I could go into those next 3 months. And now, as I've ended the 6-month period and I feel great, I know I'm not done. I mean, I'm not having limbic system trauma, but I think that I can still continue to do better. So I'm going to do like Joe Dispenza's program. There's some meditation programs. I mean, you just don't stop, because if you can rewire your brain, you can also unwire it or keep wiring it or whatever. I think it's a lifelong process is what I'm getting at. And because I think that my issues started when I was a little kid, even just my whole coming up and everything, I think that it's something that I always have to be cognizant of and work on. I'm a highly sensitive person. I have that personality trait. I don't know, a lot of times I find that people who experience these illnesses are also highly sensitive people. A lot of them are empaths. Not all of them, but there's a lot of them, a high number of them. So people who are really sensitive already, I think, are just predisposed. They're not predisposed. It's just easier for that to happen. More vulnerable, yeah, from the sensitivity. So, so that's my story. And I can tell you a little bit how it works and what you do. So when you first start the program, you come up with you have to go through the workbook, and you come up with a list of all the evil things that you think. And those would be the beginning of the evil things that you think. The evil things that you think are going to change as you go down. And you have to start paying attention to those things. And you spend an hour a day doing, you spend an hour a day doing visualizations. So first you have to watch these DVDs, and you have to get through all of them and then do the workbook before you can even get any coaching from them, because you're going to have a million questions. Most of us are really foggy and sick when we start, so we don't even remember half of the material. One of the things I did that I'm really glad I did was, as soon as I got through this stuff, I hired a coach. And I got one coaching session, and it was really all I needed, because I had a whole list of questions I'd written down. I was ready for this lady. And she really she really dialed me in on my training. So what I would do is I would do what's called rounds. And you do 2 memory, you have a setup statement. So my setup statement was about mold, and it has, body gestures that you go through that are telling your body different things as you stand in different positions. Very important to do those. And then you do a memory that's really happy, and then you do a future visualization that's really happy. And just like if you were to get bitten by a snake, right? And that thing's really traumatic, and then all the time when you see that snake, you're like, whatever. Well, you're rewiring your brain with positive feelings in this. So you've gone through your setup statement, and then you've put all these endorphins and you bliss out. You try to get as happy as you can in these memories. And that rewires your brain. You can rewire your brain with pain, and you can rewire your brain with joy. And so we're rewiring our brain with joy to change these thought patterns, to change these things. I had a really difficult time with this because I couldn't remember any positive memories. Like, I had a very tiny list. And so I made stuff up. And your brain doesn't have any idea whether it's real or it's not. So I started taking magic journeys on my flying horse. I mean, all sorts of things that would probably have me, unicorns, you name it. And there's some really good guided meditations on YouTube for children that are like riding your magic unicorn, visiting the fairy garden. Like, they're really awesome. So yeah, I made up a lot of my stuff. I would watch GoPro videos so I could do kiteboarding. And then we actually have an Instagram page where me and this other girl just post pictures and challenge people. Here's a picture, make up your vision. Because it's really common with people who are in a negative state to not be able to access a lot of memories, or maybe they just don't have them, right? So you make them up. And you can make them up all the way through until you believe them. I don't know, but it's pretty awesome. And so if you've ever been told, don't be a daydreamer, daydream, but make it good stuff, because everything that goes on in there, it counts. Your brain believes it. It doesn't know. When you're recollecting that old, horrible memory of Christmas through your family and everybody fighting, you just got to change that script. Like, that stuff's got to go. So, so you do the rounds, and then you go, and for me, I would go into some place like Lowe's, or I might eat something that I knew was oldie, and which was horrible, and intentionally expose myself until I would start to feel symptoms, and then I would leave, and I'd go do rounds. I mean, be out in the parking lot of Home Depot doing rounds, looking all weird, all sorts of weird in front of people, which I got used to because I was walking around with a mask all the time, right? So it was no big deal. And I had to have a lot of, how Cesar Millan trains people's dogs, and the dog will be like, "Rah!" and he'll be like, pop it on the side of the head, and the dog's like, huh, what, You got to do that with yourself. So I would have all sorts of videos or different things that I could do whenever my rounds wouldn't work to like elevate me, to help me get out of that loop of panic and fear. And so I just want to share, because it's kind of funny. I'm in a restaurant with my husband, and I didn't tell him that I had had a very severe reaction at this restaurant the last time we were there. And he had just said, hey, why don't we go get sushi? And I was like, am I ready for that? Yeah, I'm going to do it. So I didn't tell him. We go, and I'm like, I'm good. Oh my God, I'm dying. And my brain is like, and I cannot get out of the loop. And the panic is building, and I'm like, oh my God. And I start singing, living on a prayer. I'm like total Bon Jovi. My husband is looking at me like, what is wrong with you? Like, you have become way too much from the girl in the mask, and now you're losing your mind in the restaurant. And I said, look, I had to do that. I'm sorry. And he did laugh at first, and then he didn't, which made it even funnier. And then I couldn't stop laughing, right? So you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable when you do this, because sometimes you're going to need living on a prayer to get you through a moment where, you know, this is going crazy. Yeah. So after all of that, I just feel so much more at peace and happy, and that I'm just on a great trajectory and blessed. And I'm so glad to be talking to y'all. I talk to everybody about this stuff because there are a lot of people that suffer from it. And we're the pioneers out here doing the stuff. And 10 years from now, everybody else will be the settlers, and we'll probably have cooler stuff to do it with. And, you know, but we're the ones who are like doing it. And people sometimes might even think you're weird, but not as weird as they think. When you have mold illness, or you can't use a phone, or whatever, you know, I experienced the whole people abandoning me thing, thinking that I was crazy. And I'm like, now how do you feel? I had a brain trauma. You know, you can understand that. People get that. But when you have all those weird illnesses, they don't understand and they judge. They're like, it's in your head. Well, they're kind of right. But it's a brain trauma, and it's totally healable. And so we all go through stuff. And so I agree, like you said, that this is really something for everybody, because your thoughts and your emotions dictate your health. They dictate what you manifest in your life. It's everything. And as I started to become more positive and started to come out of this, people started calling me to go and sell houses and to do stuff. And I'm just like, this is no accident. This is pretty cool. So, yeah. I do ride my unicorn, and I'll give my clients a choice of unicorns. Most of my unicorns come in metallic colors because I try to be more adult these days, but every once in a while there's a pink one in there. I don't lie. But, and I have a guardian angel who's 6'7", and he likes Snickers bars, and he's super cool, and he's got big giant black wings, even though he's a good angel. He's just like, yeah. I mean, you just make it up. And I have been birthed by a polar bear. I have had my skin shedded with a giant anaconda snake. We shed each other in the Amazon, which was really cool. Sometimes you just develop these storylines, and then you go back to them, and then you can't wait to go back to them. But I will tell you, when you get towards the end, that 4th or 5th month, that may not even be the end for you. I don't know. It gets hard because you've juiced those memories so much. And that's when looking at a picture and going, I am outside. It's a beautiful sunny day. I can smell the pine in the air. And I'm walking across this beautiful old bridge. And so you'll just look at a picture, and you'll come up with a story, and the more you do that, the more creative you get. It's like a whole other part of, it's like rewiring for creativity on top of rewiring for bliss. And so now I can look at a picture, and do a visualization or a memory off of it. It doesn't always work out great, but, you know, and sometimes in the beginning, your limbic brain will do some really crappy things to you. So I'm like, oh, I'm paddleboarding, you know, I'm in California, I'm having a good time. There's sharks all around me, right? And I'm like, then I got mad, and I'm like, but they're big sharks, and they want to play. And so I'm just like giving my limbic system that we're not going to do that. And then if I can't get out of that loop, I'll switch to a new memory, you know, because sometimes the limbic system's going to be like, there's scary stuff there. We're not going to go there. So, yeah. So that's my story. Did I cover everything? Thank you. Thank you.
Do you remember, so this chance. This system, so I saw Gretchen talking about DNRS, and SHALAN had some PTSD, some stress stuff that was going on.
And neurological
And
symptoms.
neurological symptoms, because we got used to hospital 4 years ago, and we changed out the carpet, and the padding wasn't pure. So I was vomiting daily, and she was having memory loss, and one of our dogs was vomiting, and we were sleeping in the living room, so it was ridiculous. So that was like a trigger for us. Plus, I was very sick, and she was having to run the business and take care of me, and blah blah blah. So it was really okay. Thanks. So it was challenging. So when I saw Gretchen's post about DNRS and it helps PTSD, blah blah blah, I said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And she bought it. So it was like what, $265 or something like that.
Yeah, about.
It's not. Oh, Sabrina has it, so it was like $260. I can't remember, but so it took a little minute, like a week, to get it in, and so then she started on it right away, and I have delayed. But she's changed a lot in that short amount of time, and I was going to say something else. She also, Annie Hopper, I'm Annie Pauley, so you can get mad at her, don't get mad at me.
I'm just gonna write something.
So this is where you order it, retrainingthebrain.com, I think, yeah. If you want to try this out. She also does like a 4-day intensive where you go to wherever she's doing this and you stay there and you go through this and then you come back. So if that's like
Might be a better
something to
situation,
like
yeah.
get her out of the environment so you feel safe, then that might be the route to go with, to throw yourself into it. Because this relies on you to do it. And if you don't have self-motivation, then like me, then it might be a little more difficult. So maybe signing up for the 4-day intensive. So if you have PTSD or any kind of sensitivities or depression or anxiety, all of that is the limbic system. Okay? And do you want to say something about how it helps you? Or we're a little, yeah, it's 8:15.
Yeah.
That's okay. We wanna go.
We gotta go because we're on sleep clean, or clean hygiene.
Okay.
For sleep.
Okay.
So I have to have her in bed exactly.
Yeah.
Same
Okay.
time. I'm sorry, guys.
And
Okay.
I thought it was at 6. But I want to get you her number, and I will circle back to you, and I want to get your number too.
Sure. Okay. All right. So you want to hear it? Do y'all-
I did too, but I just.
Yeah, I get you. Do what you gotta do.
So Annie just wanted me to share my story a little bit, at least, because I'm still in the process of healing, so what she is too, but we're all healing. But so the story actually started like 10 years ago. We lost our home, and because of the recession and stuff, and within 6 months' time, we lost our home. We lost 3 of our animals because they were old, but we had them for 15, 18 years, and 3 of our animals died, and then we almost lost our business because of the recession and everything too. So it was just a really cleansing time for us. It was the big strip, we call it. And one of the animals that died was one of Annie's soulmates. Like, they were really bonded, like big time. And so that really did a sucker punch to Annie, and she started kind of drifting away after that happened. And I did not deal with that well. Like, I just did not deal with that well because I prided myself on, that we were responsible for our own emotions and that we took care of them. When we got pissed, we went and meditated and dealt with it, or said what we needed to say or wrote what we needed to write, or, to deal with our emotions. And I started fixating on Annie. Why aren't you dealing with this? Why aren't you dealing with this? And she just couldn't. Like, it just sucker punched her where she couldn't deal. It triggered her limbic system, at that time. And so she started going away. But also, so we, found a new place to live and everything. And I also found that she had a mass in her belly that I felt when I would give her a massage. And I was the first one to find it. And she wouldn't deal with that. And I started fixating on that. Okay? So I started, really fixating on that she's not dealing with this. And so this dynamic started happening in our relationship. I was this, and she was like closing down even more and even more and even more. So this went on for several years, and then we moved to our home now 3 years ago. And moving into that house, it was a really interesting dynamic. We got new carpet in our bedrooms because it needed it. And so we got it installed before we moved in, and we moved in. And we let it air out for like a full week maybe, close that part of the house off to us and let it kind of air out. And we just slept in the living room for a while, to let it off gas and stuff, because that's what we felt we needed to do. So we were like, okay, I think we can go sleep in our bed now in the bedroom. And so we slept in it for 2 nights, and Annie woke up throwing up. And we were like, well, hon? And so the next day, she woke up throwing up again. And our dog's vomiting too. And I'm like, what's going on? And the third day, she's waking up throwing up. And we're like, well, something's not right here. And I don't know how we figured out what was happening, but somehow we did. Yeah. So anyway, we had, it took us a month to get the company that installed it to come and take it out of our house, and they yeah. But so we closed off the house and we slept in the bedroom. We took our mattress in the bedroom, and then, in the living room. And so we did that, and so we got scared about being in the house. So our whole, both of us just our limbic systems just went from that way. Yeah, so a couple months after we moved into the house, and we got hardwoods put in, and and we had to treat the floor as well, but we didn't think that it was mold. We didn't know what it was. We didn't get all the testing and stuff. So it just was this, something's not right here, and we had it fixed, and we were like, we'll just move on. And but 2 months after we moved into the house, I got this huge case of vertigo. I couldn't drive for 2 weeks, and I couldn't teach yoga for a couple of days, and it was really intense. And then it got to where it was manageable, but it was still there, and that didn't leave for 3.5 years. I had that, it was cyclical, But also I started having intense arm pain in my left arm. So those 2 symptoms started at the same time, and they continued on. And I'm still dealing with that. I haven't had the vertigo stuff, that dizzy feeling, that wobbly feeling. I call it a wobbly feeling. It wasn't a spinning, it was I was on a boat thing. And I hadn't had, so it took about, so I started the DNRS program, and it took about when I started the DNRS program, that week, the first week that I started it, the depression immediately left, because I had severe depression too, because I was suicidal for about 6 months, you know, really planning it out perfectly, you know. So, so the depression lifted immediately when I started the program, like the first week of it. And you know, it was like when you've been sitting for a long time and you're about to get up and you're like, oh man, I'm so stiff because I've been sitting there for so long. So it's kind of like that every time I would get, you know, a burst of energy, or, you know, because I started raising my vibration by using the retraining program, that I would get up and I'd be like, oh, awesome. And I'd take my first step and then I'd go, pow, flat on my back again. And I'm not saying literally, I'm just saying like that it was like you'd get some energy and then you'd fall right back on your back again, you know, because it'd be like a sucker punch. Because the most traumatic things for me was the emotions of it all, because of this dynamic, you know, because she's my mold. Annie's my mold. I'm sorry to say that.
But good night sounds good.
No, like, because that's what triggers me. Annie's what triggers me. Like mold triggers your limbic system, Annie's what triggers my limbic system. So it's like, so any kind of conflict or irritation or that's what triggers me, you know? So that's a constant, because we live together and we work together. So she's my triggers, and yeah. So so, you know, my thing is that I withdraw. You know, I would try to go to a safe place that I could just withdraw to, because I didn't want those triggers that way. So I withdrawing from Annie, withdrawing from people. I started holding up. That's how I tried to protect myself. And that was very painful, because I felt abandoned, and it's this very interesting thing. You're abandoning. I'm doing the abandoning, right? But I flip it into that they're doing it to me, you know. So it's like all these emotional swells and it's all this trickery going on, you know. So so the DNRS in the program, to me, it's a structured way of raising your vibration. And because I'm an energy girl, I'm all about energy, you know, and understanding about how that your energy affects you and your world. And this is a structured way that you can address your energy body, which is what your physical body is made of. Okay? So this is a structured way to raise your vibration. And when you're raising your vibration, there's no way for illness to be there at the same time. You know, when you raise your vibration, all you can see are the good things around you, you know, or you see more and more of the good things around you. The more you raise your vibration, because you'll never be finished.
No.
You'll never be finished. There's always another level you can go, higher or better, you know. So as you're, the higher you raise your vibration, the more good you're going to see in your life. You know, and so I'm still working this a lot intently, and I did it for 4 months religiously, like very committed. You know, I probably missed like 5 days in that 4 months, and then this last month I've been struggling in it. You know, and
you miss the structure. You miss the structure of not doing it daily and being such a huge part. You kind of let it slip away.
Well, I I let it slip away, but it's actually a choice that I made.
Oh, okay.
I chose because I started feeling so good that some of the rounds felt negative. So I didn't want to repeat the negative parts of the symptoms that I had been having. Like there's a part of it that says, in the past, this happened. This resulted in fear, anxiety, depression, and worry, and it was because of blah, 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 and I didn't want to say that anymore. So I started trying to like manipulate that, and started trying to, so I would still meditate, like I would still do my inner work, but I wouldn't time it. And I wouldn't do the structure part. I would just go out on my own and say, oh, what are some good memories I can think of? Oh, what are some good things I want to create in my life? So I would do that. So I would just skip the other part. And I don't know how that's serving me yet. So I'm experimenting right now, in other words, and I'm trying to figure out what's best for me, because some days I'm like, okay, I got to go to the structure. So I'm doing the structure. And then other days I'm like, I'm not going to do the structure, So I'm still doing the work, and I'm still, because it's a mindfulness practice also. It's about being with your thoughts, or being aware of your thoughts all the time. It's not just the hour a day for the structured part. So this is also about being aware of what you're thinking all the time. Like, am I flipping? If I'm feeling abandoned, am I flipping it? Yes, I am. I'm the one that's doing the action or non-action, I'm the one that's doing it. They're not abandoning me, I'm abandoning. Or that I'm worrying about what she said to me, not Annie, but like what so-and-so said to me, and I'm fixating on it, and I'm regurgitating it like continuously. So that's like, okay, I'm doing that now. So I got to go distract myself or start to reprogram and start to say a different story, or so it's just a constant, practice. So I'm still doing the practice. I'm fluctuating right now. I'm experimenting, and I'm struggling at the same time. So I'm still working it, but I'm not in the structure as much as I was before. So I haven't had like the vertigo symptoms in probably like 2 months full, which is awesome. And the arm pain is dissipating. Like it's still like twinges now and then. So they're both dramatically diminished, like a lot. And the depression or the mental, like emotional struggle that I get into is so much better. Like I had 2 full weeks of just feeling flat out pretty joyful, or can manage everything and not be so affected by other people's moods or anything. I didn't get down about anything, in other words, I had 2 full weeks of that, like a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. I'm getting better, like I'm still progressing, in other words,
Happy memory.
Yeah. That I'm still, I can still see the ways that I'm still progressing that way, and that feels really good. And I still am falling on my back, but I'm catching it quicker, and I'm able to sustain a higher vibration for longer periods of time, which I'm really grateful for. And it's been I'm just so grateful for the information, like that it's exactly what I needed. Because when I was like 1 year ago exactly, from this month, I found the medical mediums information from Shanda. Shanda shared that with me, and I just, once I got that that's what I needed, I just soaked up all his information. His name is Anthony William.
I actually picked that up from you, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you posted something and I went and checked them out, and then I'm like down the
Awesome.
rabbit hole with them. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, his information really started helping my brain, because I had taken myself off of sugar, like off of fruit, off of any kind of carbs. I'd taken myself off of all of that, and my depression just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And like,
You weren't getting the energy.
no glucose my brain needed glucose.
Yeah, your brain, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, your brain has to have glucose to function, and I totally stripped myself of that, because that's what I was told to do by my naturopath and my acupuncturist, and that's what I had researched too. All the alternative medicine say that, if you have skin rashes, which I had a lot of skin rashes for the last 10 years, a lot of them. And so I forgot to mention that was one of the things too, but I haven't had a skin rash since last time I had one was last March. So almost a year.
Almost a year,
Yeah, so that's awesome. And so I really am taking the nutrition information that's so important to me, and that took away the nutrition information from the medical medium, has taken me like the fear of any kind of disease totally out of my system, like fear of cancer or fear of
Oh yeah, because
you know.
focus on that stuff when you're sick.
Yeah.
Think about it all the time.
Yeah.
I thought I had throat cancer. I had my dentist check with that thing. I was coughing all the time. Yeah. No.
I'm so glad you did it, girl. You're doing it. And I had a chronic cough too. Every winter I would get a cough for 2 to 4 months, like constant. And it was intense. It was intense because it was just constant. When I would sleep, I wouldn't cough. It was when I was awake that I would just cough constantly. But so I started the medical medium last January, and that was the first winter I didn't have a cough in the last 20 years. 20 years. Yeah. So in this winter I haven't had it yet either. So I'm thinking that was, part of it all too. Part of because I'm highly sensitive. I'm a big empath.
Yeah.
I totally am. And I had a traumatic childhood too, so it started young for me also, so we were taken away from my parents or my mom, because my parents had broke up when I was toddler or something. And then got taken away from my parents, my mom, when I was 5, I think. And then got into the foster system for a year, and then adopted when I was 8 into a family. And my mom and even though the house was very stable, my adoptive parents were very stable, and they are very loving people, but my mom had a lot of problems emotionally, and that being the highly sensitive empath that I am, it really affected me a lot, to where I split myself and became a people pleaser, and or walking on eggshells, or just, so all of that kind of stuff played into the limbic system thing, and then the trigger happened. The losing our house wasn't the big trigger for me. It was our moving into our new house, and the biggest trigger was Annie, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Annie's sickness, so.
Annie, why don't you get sick?
Well,
Why not?
it was just,
But are you feeling so much stronger now that you've got all this?
yeah, I totally am not finished. Like, I'm struggling a little today. Like, so, it's hard. I did my practice today, like before I came here actually, and it was very helpful, but I'm struggling a little bit. Like, I'm a little down today. So, so I'm still in it. I'm still working it, and I'm still healing though. So I'm just grateful for that.
But you are grateful because you know you're stronger. You know.
Oh yeah, I see my progress.
Yeah.
I see my progress, and I see my healing, and I know it's exactly what I needed. The nutrition information from the medical medium, and then the structured raising of my vibration with the DNRS was the ticket for me, for my healing. And that's all I know right now,
That's
That's a
lot.
And I'm sure I'll know a little more later, or maybe even a lot more. So, but one thing I am passionate about is that to find good information, when I find good information that works for me, I want to share that with other people, because if it helps me, it's going to help someone else,
Yeah.
So I just want to share that for whoever needs it, and whoever doesn't, let it pass, So, so that's what we're here for, and we thank you for coming and for listening to our story, because that's part of our healing too, is when we can tell our story, and because it takes courage to do that, and it helps you believe in yourself more when you can share your story, like that too. And then you also find how you're growing, because you've had the courage to go through it, and you can actually talk about it without breaking down, without just, so that shows you that you're really healing, when you can talk about it without it just crumbling.
And that's so much more powerful to hear all this from people that we know.
Yeah.
Than even reading it. I mean,
Yeah.
you're living proof, and it's undeniable. With that stuff, you kind of have a little bit of a belief system to go on, but you're standing here before us, and
Yeah.
you're telling us your story, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
All right. All right, kids. Well, thank you for coming, and
Thank you.
Thank
we
you.
love you, and
Having
Thank
we'll
you,
see you
Gretchen.
soon.